Hi, and welcome to my monthly Repro Law Roundup. This is the first one, so I'm kind of getting used to everything. So bear with me. I'm not used to not seeing people. So if you have any questions, type them in. All right. So, but just for privacy's sake, we're going to keep everybody's information confidential. Because it's not only agencies that are on this, but intended parents and maybe some donors and surrogates and maybe some clinic people. So, we all want to protect everybody here. And welcome. I am going to provide a monthly legal update. I work with this agency, and Scal's, one of my besties. And she said, Stephanie, it'd be really great if you could just do something monthly for us, just a quick Zoom, because I have so many questions, especially since, the executive order with Trump and birthright citizenship. But there are so many things that are happening so fast and so quickly. And if you could just give me an update. And I said, dang. I bet you other agencies, intended parents, other people have questions. So I should do it for everybody. So that's what I'm doing. So let's get started. Okay, birthright citizenship. That is the big thing that's happening in our industry. And I get so many questions from IPs and agencies, especially about the 22 states. Like, Stephanie, oh, wait, I forgot to turn off my phone. Of course I did. Hold, please. I'll probably get a phone call and people will be like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm in the middle of something. Anyways, so people keep asking me about the 22 states, those original 22 states that sued. So that's not a thing right now, and I'll explain. So in January, Trump um, issued a bunch of executive orders. It was kind of a cool thing, not gonna lie. You remember the big stadium? He signed like hundreds of them. It was a kind of a baller move, not gonna lie. But not a fan of this executive order. What he said is that anybody who's here illegally or legally that has a child, that child is not a citizen of the United States. Our clients are here legally, right? And so their children born via surrogacy would not be a citizen of the United States. Interesting about what he put in there. He put about the mother progenitor and the father progenitor. And we know that isn't really how it works in surrogacy. And then if you couple egg donor or sperm donor or what, it's just not how our world works. But the Trump administration is not focused on surrogacy, but they know about our industry. So they are a little bit on their radar. But again, the executive order does not cover surrogacy. So that's what they said. As we all know, our clients don't really care for the most part about the passport. The reason why they want the passport is because they can leave the country quickly. And of course, we want them to go home. They want to go home. They want to go home to their country, their family. They want their children to grow up and live wherever that is, Germany, France, Spain, Brazil, wherever, right? I was just in Germany, so I did a talk on this very subject, right? And they had lots of questions. So anyways, so after the executive order was enacted, immediate lawsuits. 22 states sued. There were three lawsuits, I think. Maybe four, but I think three. And immediately, the executive order was halted, stopped. In the legal world, we say injunction, right? So there was an injunction, which meant it cannot go forward, right? So then the Trump administration went all the way to the Supreme Court and they said, listen, we don't think that there should be an injunction across the whole entire United States, right? We think that the injunction should just be for the original 22 states that sued. Okay. And so the Supreme Court said, you know what, Mr. Trump, you're right. That's what should happen. That just the 22 states, not the whole entire United States, No lawsuit should cover the whole entire United States unless it's a class action. We think, this is what the Supreme Court said, we think a class action is the more appropriate venue. Fine, great. I recently participated in a class action because Facebook, dear Facebook, they what Facebook did is they exposed my privacy as well as everybody else's, and they said, "Would you like to participate in the class?" And I said, "Sure, I would." Right? You violated my privacy. So, what they did is, they, meaning the class, got a lawsuit together and they asked me how I would like my money. And I said Venmo. And the other day, $7.96 popped into my Venmo. I know, really adorable, right? The attorneys got way more than $7.96. I'm going to tell you that. So what they did is those three lawsuits immediately became class actions, right? First one went up, Trump executive order, unconstitutional. Second one, unconstitutional. Third one, unconstitutional. Of course, it's unconstitutional. The reason why we have constitutional amendments is because to change them, you have to go through Congress. Once Congress approves the change, then it has to be ratified by, I think, 35 states. It's a very long process. It's a heavy lift, right? So I'm waiting because, we all know Trump doesn't like to lose. And, he immediately appeals like that, like with hours. But he didn't. There was no appeal. No appeal came, no appeal came, no appeal came. And so recently what happened is he appealed. He recently appealed to the Supreme Court. They have not taken it up yet, right? So they have not taken that up. But he did appeal it. So if they take it up, which I expect they do, the Supreme Court does like to take on very big cases, precedent-setting cases, so they'll probably take it up. They will rule at the end of June or the beginning of July. I predict the beginning of July because that's kind of when they go on recess. And so what they do is they like drop their biggest opinions, their biggest cases, and they go, bye, see you. We'll be back in August. I mean, not August, September, October, right? So they go away, but they drop their big cases. I don't know how they're going to rule. There was a case in 1886. All the issues that Trump is presenting were already litigated in 1886. And they said that it doesn't matter if the parents were immigrants, the parents were not here legally. This person was born in the United States, therefore he is a citizen of the United States. But the Supreme Court will probably take it up. So if they rule against birthright citizenship, we go to Plan B. Plan B is something that we did during COVID. I think you all remember that. So we will petition the government, and we need the government to get you out quickly. We'll draft letters, paperwork, all the things. I was recently in Cologne, Germany for, like I said, for a conference, and I was speaking on this very subject. And so I told them we'd go to Plan B because the UK and Australia have said that they will fast track their citizens home because the United States doesn't want you to stay here, right? You're not a citizen. Your child may be, but you're not. And your country wants you home. And you want to go home, like I said. So Australia and the UK said they'll fast track. So we'll work with all the governments to kind of fast track you home, as well as work with our government to fast track you home. But just like COVID, when no passports were being issued, we will petition your government with the help, letters, all that stuff. As one of the attendees during my talk on Sunday raised his hand and he goes, so basically it's going to be more work for you. And I said, yes, it will. But it's fine, really and truly. We want to get you home as quickly as you can. Your baby, if your baby's healthy, you want to fly home. I know when I did my surrogacy, it was in the United States, but my children flew home 4 days later. You want to get home, right? So that's what's going on with birthright citizenship. I'll keep you posted, and we'll be talking about that, I'm sure, a lot. And then another thing that happened was the special report, a rapporteur report on violence against women. It was written by an Italian woman, and she said that there should be a worldwide ban on surrogacy, that surrogacy is like human trafficking. And it got submitted to the United Nations, and the United Nations is going to vote on it, I believe, in November. So I just want to clear that up because there's been some confusion about that. Because people hear, they go, what's a rapporteur? You know, I guess it's a special person. I don't really know, actually. I should look that up. But it's not the UN. The UN has not adopted this. She submitted the report to the UN, right? And it's one person. She's an Italian woman. We know how Italians feel. Not my clients. They love surrogacy. They've had their babies. But there are some Italians who are against surrogacy. Look at the recent law, right? That no matter where you are, no matter what Italian, wherever you're situated, any Italian in the world, if they go through surrogacy, they're breaking the law. And anybody who helps any Italian in the world do surrogacy is probably breaking the law. It's a law that really you can't enforce because it's too broad. But she was also talked to by people high up in organizations like ABA and Quad A. They explained to them how we do surrogacy in the United States as well as other areas where we do it very safely. The woman comes forward. She's not forced. She's not trafficked. She raises her hand voluntarily. She's probably thought about this for years. She goes through a background check, mental health screening. We make sure that she has support, care, all the things, right? Bodily autonomy, right? And she was talked to about this, but she felt that that was not relevant. And so she issued her report. I did some research on the person she submitted the report to, feels the same way. But again, it is not the UN. So I'll keep you updated on that as well. So stay tuned, right? And then today, what came out was the Wall Street Journal article. I know so much news that's not very happy, I have to say. It's a lot for us in this industry, for sure. But the Wall Street Journal came out with another article on surrogacy, and this time on fraud. We all know about the Seam Breach case that happened with Dominique's side and how she stole, I think some people say 10 million, 14, $15 million, but it was a lot of money, right? She's being investigated. The article did say the State Department, FBI, police, there's been some lawsuits against her. So that is obviously horrible and devastating. And I have to say, people who prey on people who are trying to have a baby are despicable. These people are so vulnerable. I remember going through IVF. I remember not being able to have a baby. And it's devastating. And to prey on these people in such a way is disgusting. So Dominique used that money for her vegan business, traveling through Europe, fancy handbags and clothes, rapping in a studio. Oh my gosh, if you saw those videos, I wish I saved them. She was awful. But that's beside the point. What she did is despicable, beyond disgusting, right? So that article came out. It was mostly about her and Seam Breach. It also discussed IARC. It's an agency in Minnesota, and Steve Snyder. He had an accountant, and the accountant stole over $2 million. He did have a bond. He did actually make everybody whole. Thank God. That was amazing. But he delegated that duty to his accountant, this woman, right? I hold money in trust. I've held money in trust for over 20 years. The only person that is allowed to approve money that goes out is me. And that's the only person that has ever approved money. Well, back in the day when I used to have to write checks every Friday, oh my gosh, you have no idea. What a pain, seriously. And I would handwrite them. People would say to me, even my bankers, Stephanie, we can give you a stamp and you could just stamp your name. And I'm like, no, because somebody could steal the stamp and then somebody could steal the money. So I'm going to sit there for hours and write checks. Thank God for ACH payments, is all I have to say. Uh, Amazing. Um, but again, I'm the only one who approves ACH, wires, even transfers between like accounts in my bank. I approve everything, and that's the way it should be. So the article did mention, like I said, that Steve Snyder. Third person the article did mention was an attorney who held money in trust, LSA Arabalis and IRLG. It's a law firm in Los Angeles, and it's over $300,000, the article said. I didn't know how much money was involved. There is a set of intended parents, former clients of his, that are suing him for $60,000. So we'll see how that goes. Again, he's an attorney, and it's pretty awful what he did. And I'm an attorney. So all I have to say is, again, how I handle it, how I handle my trust account. I have a crime bond. I have a cybersecurity bond. I have all the things. I don't need to have a crime bond in my field. The state bar monitors my account. I have to go through some hoops. Next year, there's going to be even more hoops, which is fine, right? It's fine. Because if that helps fraud in any industry, and there's fraud in every industry, then I am okay with it. So on that same topic, Seeds has just instituted, it's the Society for Ethics in Egg Donation and Surrogacy. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud. I finally remembered all the words in the order that they go in. And I'm a member, and they just institute standards for escrow and trust companies. So you need a crime bond, and things like that. There's some things that I'm not too comfortable with, but we'll see how it all pans out. But for now, it's great that they are working on standards, right? We all need standards. What I feel we need, though, in this industry, and I'll get to it later, because now we're going to talk about mark surrogacy. So I'm going to talk about licensing when I talk about mark surrogacy. It's the case where the Asian couple, the Chinese couple, who had 20 plus surrogates in like 3 years, I think. And sorry, I have a little stuffy nose. I just traveled back from the conference in Germany. You know how when you travel back and you get all stuffy? I'm a little stuffy. Anyways, so mark surrogacy. So that's not a thing. I mean, they owned the agency and they were their only clients and they had 20 some odd kids. And oh, wait, now I have a tickle in my throat. Hold, please. Okay, much better. So now they have 20 plus kids, right? And agency owners, and they were the only clients. That's not a thing. I don't know any agency that operates like that. They did, unfortunately. Oh my gosh. One of the babies was shaken by a nanny, they believe. It's not on camera. Um, and so I have heard that they are going to be charged for that. So far, there's no evidence of child trafficking because the babies, all the kids live with them. If they were trafficked, they would not live with them. Why they were doing this, I don't know. But because of the Mark surrogacy case, we are talking about licensing for agencies. The only state that license agencies is New York, and they go through background, the agency's background, criminal, any litigation, they could do a deep dive, and I think that should happen. I think I'm licensed. I know. I just talked about an attorney who got sued. But I'm licensed, the doctors are licensed, the nurses are licensed, the mental health professionals are licensed. Um, Escrow companies, if you're in California, you need to be licensed, right? So the only piece in this pie that's not licensed, that doesn't have to go through a background check, are agencies. So I would say that there's talk in California, the organization of getting some licensing together, and I would say that that's what we need. We need licensing for agencies. I was told there are some agencies that don't even have a business license. Their company isn't even registered in the California Secretary of State for businesses. So we need something, right? I mean, there are so many great agencies out here, and there's so many great people in this business, but we need to protect our industry. So that's what I say about that. And there was I know, another thing regarding a clinic. Oh my gosh, it's Lane Fertility. She has an egg donor portion of her clinic. A lot of fertility clinics do. I mean, it makes sense. They can test the egg donors very inexpensively, and put them up on their website. Egg donor agencies cannot do that. They're not a lab. They're not a lab. They're not an IVF center. So it makes sense that a lot of clinics have their own egg donor little agency. So this is what she was doing. She had her own egg donor agency, but she wasn't paying the egg donors. So the egg donors would go through that. I've done egg retrievals. Your ovaries feel like watermelons. You've got to, follow a protocol. You've got to inject yourself. They are doing a job. They are doing the work. They should get paid. And she was not paying them, right? So I would say for you, agencies, intended parents, everybody, do your research, right? Do your research. Ask around. So she's an IVF center. She's a physician. She has a license. You would think she wouldn't do this, but she is. I don't know what she's doing with the money. The people that have done fraud in this industry, what are they doing with the money? Obviously, we know what Dominique side and Seam Breach did with the money. Um, Steve Snyder and IARC, his accountant had a gambling problem. We don't know what LSAO did with the money. Right? What is Dr. Lane doing with the money? Right? Pay these people, pay them. Because what happened is for her patients, the intended parents, paid her and put that money with her. And that money included the donor's fee. So where did that money go? Right? So that's another thing that happened. Oh, we have some good news though. I have to tell you in Hong Kong of all places, they favored the lesbian couple. There was two women, and they gave them parentage for their children. Yay! I mean, that is huge. So I don't know if they're going to broaden that. Probably not, but good news. Yay. Actually, when I was in Cologne, Germany, there was good news. There were some clients who brought their baby girl, and that's the best good news. That is what we do, and that's why we do it, so that people can have the family, the babies that they've hoped and dreamed of. So that's also good news. So super happy about that, right? Oh, by the way, this is a webinar. So while I can't see you, you can type in and ask questions. Okay. So if you have questions, always, I can answer them. And then if you think of something later, you can always email me. You can find me on all the socials and DM me. All right. Another thing is a podcast that just came out on Kind Body. I remember Kind Body. When I was in New York, I would just walk around. Angie Beltos from Chicago, Illinois, I think Chicago. She was their medical director. And I worked with her, and I think some of the people on this call, we've worked with her before. I think she was their head medical director at the time. But I was in New York, and I'd walk by, and the colors were beautiful. It was like a little storefront, if you wanted to freeze your eggs, just walk right in. You were right there. It was like, going to like, I don't know, like a UPS, your nail salon, whatever, your hairdresser, right? You would just pop right in. It was very convenient. And I thought, what a brilliant idea. This is fabulous, right? Of course, I didn't think about something when I was listening to the podcast. I was like, it was my like, duh moment. Like, of course. So they would build all these centers that were very accessible, very easy to get to. Because, fertility is a lot. There's appointments and appointments, shots, ultrasounds, not so fun things, right? And so to be really accessible is great. So, but when I was listening to the podcast, they were talking about you have to have it very clean, right? If you're an embryologist, you're dealing with very delicate embryos, and even eggs are more delicate. An egg is like an ice cube. It's frozen, it's solid. When you defrost it, what happens to an ice cube? It melts and becomes a puddle. You have to be very careful. Sperm is like a steak, right? You freeze it, you unfreeze it, it's still there, right? Embryos, they're so precious. These people, as we all know, have spent years getting there. It is not easy. It's even more difficult. Before, you could have a baby in a year, egg donation and surrogacy. Now it takes so long to get your embryos, 6 months, because we freeze them, we test them, right? So during the podcast, I learned, which I kind of knew, but really and truly, is that because they were so close to, like, a dry cleaner or a deli, the air wasn't clean in where they did the retrievals. It wasn't as clean as it should be. Where they did the transfers, where they held the embryos. It's dirty air, and dirty air affects those very, very precious things. So they were losing embryos, right? And they were transferring the wrong embryos because they grew very fast. They had private equity money. They were like a Facebook, and a Google, that kind of high tech, go fast and break things. In IVF, we do not want to go fast because when you go fast, you break things, and we don't want to break eggs, and we don't want to break sperm. It's a steak. It's hard to break, but you get my point. We don't want to break embryos. So the podcast was great for that, I have to say. Super enlightening. I think it's 6 episodes. There might be more. But I do know one agency that because of their experiences working with Kindbody, they won't work with Kindbody any longer. So just do your research as IPs and agencies. If you're working with Kindbody, there are some kind bodies I know that really do a great job. So I would just say to do some research, follow up and check just to make sure, right? It's always good to do a deep dive. The longer the agency has been in business, though, the longer the clinic has been in business, the longer anybody has been in business, there's going to be negatives, right? You are going to make mistakes. You are going to have some stumbles, right? But you want to look at the long term, the longevity, talk to people, ask who they are, right? So, anyways, I think that's it. I think I covered everything. Um, if you have any questions, like I said, oh, wait, one more thing. This poor teacher in Pennsylvania, I don't know if you heard about her, but she taught at a Catholic school. She's a second-time surrogate. She taught at a Catholic school previously when she was a surrogate before. The Catholic diocese found out and they put her on leave because they're against surrogacy. So I don't know if they're going to follow up. She has appealed to that ruling. I mean, what a beautiful thing for her to do. She's carrying somebody else's baby. And let's face it, wasn't Mary a surrogate too? I mean, think about it. She didn't have sexual intercourse to get pregnant. She carried God's baby. So maybe we should think about that. Anyways, so the Pennsylvania woman was put on leave. But you know what? The pregnancy looks like it's going well. Looks like she's going to be delivering another baby to some couple who's been wanting that baby for forever. So hopefully it ends up well and hopefully she gets her job back. Hey, if I had a school, I'd hire her in a hot second, right? Um, but like I said, we really want to protect our industry. We really, most of us here want to do a good job. But if anything comes up from that, if I find out anything more about that, I will definitely let you know. Thanks for attending my first Repro Law Roundup. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be doing these monthly. I'll be giving updates. I'm sure we'll be talking about birthright citizenship and anything that comes up. legally. If you have any questions, you want me to talk about something, please, please, please reach out to me and let me know. You can find me on email. You can find me, like I said, on all the socials. I'm super accessible. I'd love to talk to you. Again, thank you for attending, and take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.